The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
The role of a league in modern society. It can be much more than to just entertain.
Love most about the NLL relative to my past experience with the other major sports is that our players are, as I describe them, Clark Kent by day and Superman by night, in that they're the best lacrosse players in the world, but they also have day jobs. And many of our athletes are teachers.
That's Jessica Berman, Deputy Commissioner of the National Lacrosse League, who is utilizing all methods of outreach. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Jessica Berman spent years working in the NHL as a Vice President of Community Development. And we discussed that background as she helps grow the reach of the National Lacrosse League in organic, educational ways. But we are also in a pandemic, and the NHL, that was the first major team sports league to announce how it would intend to come back to play. So we're going to lean on her experience of navigating complicated league issues as well. Our guest this week is the Deputy Commissioner of the National Lacrosse League, Jessica Berman. Hey, Jessica, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Bram, how are you?
Doing okay. How is life for you during a pandemic?
It's a challenge for sure, as I think it is for everyone. I've referred to the global pandemic as the great equalizer. I think a lot of us have gotten to experience things that we never imagined, and strangely, no matter who you are and no matter what you're doing, I think we can all relate to each other's experiences. So it's in that way been connecting and allowed, I think, for people to have empathy for other people's experiences.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see sports kind of collectively, that it affects them all the same, but I'm sure it's different. In the lacrosse world, how is this affecting business for you all?
Well, on a day-to-day basis, I think there's been certainly some positives in that this has forced us to think differently about the way we communicate with key stakeholders, whether it's externally with our fans or internally with our league office staff or our teams. And I think that's been pretty universal from what I understand. There's just been a focus and a prioritization of transparency and communication that I think hadn't existed prior. Certainly for me, being relatively new to the lacrosse world and the NLL, it's allowed me to build relationships with our governors as well as our team executives in a way that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do in such a short period of time. So I'm really grateful for that. I think it's also forced us to think differently about content and connecting with our fans. I think historically we've really focused on the game and how the game feeds the content we create. And without the game being played and during a period of time where we otherwise would have had game action, it's really forced us to think differently about the type of content we create, which I think has served us really well and created some key learnings that will live beyond the pandemic.
Can you be specific? What are some of the lessons you learned, and what are some of the new things you're trying to implement?
Yeah, I would say some of the lessons we've learned are that although our fans love the sport of lacrosse and love the game, the content is overperforming and over-indexing in fan engagement is really the human stories and the ability for our fans to get to know the players, our referees, and others. We've developed a series of content and shows. One, for example, All Talk, No Action, which really just commentating about different aspects of the game and providing different levels of insight. We've done some kind of stunts where we've gotten our fans engaged in a promotion of imagining who would be on the cover of an esports game if we were to develop one, which was one of our highest performing pieces of content. It's also allowed us to really tap into some of the creative juices of our content team and created some beautifully produced recaps of this past season, which was part of our We Are campaign, really trying to put a stake in the ground about our brand. And, our fans are just really taking to our new strategy of connection.
There's another program you guys are doing that I wanted to talk to you about specifically through EverFi, which is what's called the EduCup Challenge, and you're dealing with young kids, K through 12. Could you kind of describe what your role is with that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's actually for those who maybe read our original interview that I did with you guys or anything else about me. My passion and really the reason I work in sports is social impact. I believe that sports has the power to change the world, and I think that's even more true in a global pandemic. And history has taught us that people turn to sports to really help them to heal. And so the idea of partnering with a company like EverFi to deploy digital education resources for middle schoolers and high schoolers is something that I'm super passionate about. And we're really proud to join the other major sports leagues and EverFi to really put content into the marketplace that kids and the next generation of fans can tap into. And I think for us, our sort of unique twist on that, which is the thing that I love most about the NLL relative to my past experience with the other major sports, is that our players are, as I describe them, Clark Kent by day and Superman by night, in that they're the best lacrosse players in the world, but they also have day jobs. And many of our athletes are teachers. And so it's been fun to see how some of our players and even our referees have supported and promoted our partnership with EverFi and the EduCup to get kids to tap into digital education resources. And our resources that we're putting forward as the NLL and that we're sort of standing behind and sponsoring are focused on digital citizenship and mental health, which are two areas that as a league we're really passionate about. And I can also say, as a parent of a 9 and a 12-year-old, which are kind of close to the demographic that our content is reaching, I can tell you that parents today are searching for ways to have their kids be engaged in educational programming, because at-home learning has been a real challenge for parents. And a lot of us have concerns about how our kids are going to come out of this and be able to move on to the next stage, whether it's going from 3rd to 4th grade or 6th to 7th grade, as my kids are.
I have 11 and 7, and my 11-year-old should be being promoted from elementary school and heading to middle school. And we are concerned that this is going to be a massive change for her. And it's already very strange how it is happening in real time. And we are concerned about that. It is a real concern.
I think the concern is exactly in that sweet spot of sort of middle school and high school, because as we've learned over the years, education is not just about core academics, it's about socialization. We actually were walking in town yesterday, me and my two boys, and we bumped into an acquaintance of my 12-year-old, and I was like, say hi. And he was like, I forgot how to do that. He actually said that to me. And, it's like we've taken our kids out of the realm of normalizing socialization, and it's going to be a bumpy thing for a lot of kids.
It is. I want to lead on some of your experience for a moment, because as we're taping now, there are leagues that are discussing, major sports leagues that are coming back. And you worked for a long time with the NHL, and so they're kind of the first of the major pro sports that have decided to figure out how to try to do this in their playoff format. Can you, in your position, kind of take me through what your thinking is as you try to get games back on the field and do it as safely as possible?
Yeah, happy to. I think I can tell you how we're approaching it, which I would imagine, I think I know, is a similar process for all the leagues. It's actually one of the things that I've really appreciated about the pandemic. I think there's always been collaboration between and among the leagues in terms of sharing best practices and key learnings. In this last 2.5 months, the level of collaboration and transparency between the leagues has been unprecedented in my experience. So I am in daily communication with all of the other leagues, and certainly the ones who are kind of first to market, like the UFC and NASCAR and WWE. So been really thankful for everyone's transparency on that front. The process really goes like this. I think the first and foremost is from a stakeholder management perspective as a league and league leadership, you need to really keep tabs and be in close contact with your owners to understand their risk tolerance, because no matter how protective your measures are and how tight your policies and protocols are, whether you have a 72-page memo or a 49-page memo outlining the process for returning, there is some inherent risk in pulling any of these events off in the current environment and circumstances. So making sure that everybody's sort of on board with that risk tolerance, I think, is the most important element of this. And then just assuming everybody's sort of willing to step into that space, it's really, from my perspective, a cost-benefit analysis, because the costs are clear. It's resource costs, it's bandwidth costs, it's taking away some time for preparing for next year. And there's a lot of policies and protocols that are required, and some of which is out of your control, like some of the immigration issues that exist in terms of cross-border travel. And so you weigh all of that with the kind of desire to be first to market, knowing that you have a captive audience who are at home right now, who have a ton of disposable time, which is a very unique set of circumstances that almost never happen. And people are starved for sports content. And so there's a huge opportunity if you can tap into that and avoid or sidestep some of the pitfalls, and have plans and policies in place for how you're going to handle what are likely inevitable outcomes of having someone test positive, and how you do contact tracing, and what you do with that person, how you handle quarantine protocols, working with local jurisdictions on whether or not you have any fans or who is considered essential personnel. So it's a very complicated process, and it's a very complicated analysis. And ultimately, like many business decisions, comes down to your risk tolerance.
I'll leave you with this. Let's get back into lacrosse here for a minute. You describe yourself as kind of new-ish still to this sport, but it's fresh eyes, and this is a unique time to reconsider a lot of different things with things on hold. This podcast is dedicated to future and technology and all of that type of stuff. So as you kind of look at modernizing your league and the sport, what comes to mind? What practices do you think will be implemented in the years to come?
Well, very timely question. I spent the morning working on our sports betting strategy, and I think that the introduction of sports betting into certainly the U.S. and ultimately probably over time in Canada is really going to change the way sports is consumed. And I think for our league, given the action and the inputs of the game that feed sports betting, I think there's a huge opportunity from a technology perspective to create all kinds of ancillary ways of consuming our sport, whether it's through alternative screen or second screen or watch and bet. And we're exploring all of those avenues, including creating the foundation, the platform to essentially launch our sports betting strategies. As you may recall, we announced partnerships in this space back in the fall with MGM as our sports betting marketing partner, with SportLogic as our data partner, and with Genius as our sports betting integrity partner. And we were really on track to launch and go to market with lacrosse's first sports betting strategy and platform for this 2020 playoffs. Of course, COVID-19 had different plans for us, but we've really used this time to be more strategic and methodical about how we can invest in the right strategies for fan engagement from a technology standpoint for next season. And we're super excited about how that intersection of technology and innovation is going to catalyze fan engagement for the NLL.
Jessica Berman is the Deputy Commissioner of the National Lacrosse League. Thanks for joining us, Jessica.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Next week on the Future Sport Podcast, how the coronavirus is accelerating what was already happening in the modern gym with Lauren Foundos, the founder of Forte.
Streaming was, priority number 3 for every gym. Peloton has really done a service to them, seeing that, the magnitude of what that can be. And then obviously since the virus, it's now gone to number 1 because it's the only means of them communicating to their members while their gyms have been closed.
Plus, a visit into the LSU football locker room as they utilize new technology that clearly paid off on the field. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3 Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3 Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.